Let's level up your Tableau problem-solving skills. In this video, I just want to go over some practice questions that I usually give to my students when we are working through Tableau. The document that I'm going to showcase can be downloaded for free from Gumroad. The link is in the description below. Before we start, let's first answer this. How will going through these practice problems help you? There are a few factors that can help increase our competency with any kind of tool, and Tableau is really just one of these tools. Here are a couple of those factors. First is practice. It's repetition. It's really doing things over and over again. Seeing or solving something once is not enough to gain mastery for something. As a trivia, did you know that the greatest sushi chefs dedicate years and years to gain mastery in their craft? If you're interested, here is one documentary that left an impression with me. Jiro Dreams of Sushi. A second factor is variety. For example, percent difference is just one type of table calculation. But from this one type, there are also many different variations, like comparing month to month, comparing year to year, comparing a baseline to something else. Solving one type of question isn't enough. As a trivia, one beloved character in the anime Demon Slayer, his name is Zenitsu, he mastered only one form of swordsmanship style. Imagine how much more powerful he would be had he mastered more than one form. But even with this limitation, he created several variations and modifications. Needless to say, he is still very powerful. Similar to us, as we see more variety of questions, even when using the same features, we can become more competent working in Tableau. So now let's get started. This is the Gumroad page that has the practice questions. There's a couple of practice questions here already, but we're only going to focus on the first set of practice questions. So let's click on Tableau practice questions number 1. This is using the Superstore dataset. And from here, let's download it. So scroll down. You can type in 0 for the price because this is free. It will request for your email address. Let's click on Get. And from here, you can view the content. So from here, you should be able to download the PDF file. This is what the PDF file will look like. It will have some instructions on the data source, as well as a link to this particular video tutorial. I've also provided the expected answers in this PDF file so that you know you're on the right track when you're trying to answer these questions. Now let's start answering these questions. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community for creative and curious people. When I first started creating videos for this channel, I was really focused on just getting the recording done. Almost 2 years into my YouTube journey, I look back and I realize how many different skills I've had to learn or dabble with. Some of these skills I learned because I had to, and some because I wanted to. I learned some video editing, motion graphics, digital illustration and design. I also learned some productivity tools and techniques along the way. This is where a platform like Skillshare is very helpful. Sometimes we just don't know what skills we need to learn or review. And it's great to be able to pick a topic and right there and then learn a bit about it. If you're like me, starting a journey into this new digital world, or you just want to learn a variety of different topics and discover which one sticks, try Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use the link on my description box will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Let's take a look at question number 1. Which profitable subcategory or subcategories has or have been bought by less than 100 customers? Now let's pick out some keywords. The first one is it's asking for profitable, meaning the total profit for each of the subcategories is greater than 0. That's one. The second criteria is looking at another dimension, which is customers, so we need to count the number of customers and also check if there are less than 100 customers that have purchased these subcategories. Now we can start with something simple. We know we're looking at subcategories, and we're also looking at 2 different measures. The first one is profit, and the second one is the number of customers. we can simply drag profit to columns, and in here we can sort the profit so we know which ones are profitable or unprofitable. We can also add our customers. But note that customer is simply a dimension. If we simply drag and drop our customer ID to columns, it's actually going to display all of the values of our customer ID dimension. And that's not what we want. One shortcut we can use to convert a dimension into a measure is to simply right-click drag. So we can right-click drag customer ID onto our column shelf. And from here, we can choose to get the count or the count distinct. In this case, if a customer bought a specific subcategory 10 times, a count will give a value of 10, but the count distinct, which gets the unique number of customer IDs, will only give us a value of 1. So we want the second option, count distinct. Now in here, we can simply use out-of-the-box functionality in Tableau. We can simply use our filters to get these two criteria. The first one is for profitable. So in here, visually, we can see all of the values that are above 0. And in here, we also want to see the number of these subcategories that have been bought by less than 100 customers. And in here, we can even extrapolate visually. So we can see all of those values already. But let's add in our filters. So in sum of profit, click on the drop-down, show the filter. And we're only interested in ones that are profitable. So let's assume that's at least 1 cent. So 0.01. Let's also show the filter for the count distinct of customer ID. And in here, we want the maximum to be 99. And we can simply put our value into the correct filter. So in here, instead of 650, we're going to set this to 99. So the answer to this question is both copiers and machines. Question number 2. Which year and month was the best year and month for technology product sales? Also as a note, it says here, take best to mean that the year and the month that has the most sales. Because in different scenarios, best might mean something different. It might be the year and the month that has the most profit, or the year and the month that has the most customers, or the most orders. In this particular case, we're simply looking at most sales. Now, there are different ways to answer this particular question, but in this demonstration, I am going to use a highlight table. So let's drag order date onto columns. In here, we're going to expand. So expand so that we can see quarter and expand so that we can see a month. For our question, we're only interested in the year as well as the month. So we are going to remove our quarter. And just to make this a little bit easier to view, I'm going to move month from columns to rows, and this generates some kind of a matrix for us. Now we're also looking at our sales amount. I'm going to opt to use a highlight table, which means I'm going to take that measure, put that both on text and color, and then essentially try to view the answer that way. So drag sales onto text, sales onto color, and in here, the final step for our highlight table is to change the mark to a square. So on the drop down of your marks card, we're going to change this to a square. Now, this is not the final answer yet. When we are answering questions in Tableau, we really need to take a look at the narrative. Are there additional things that we need to add before we can get to the right answer? Now, in this case, we're also looking for technology, so we do need to narrow this down. Again, there are many different ways to answer this question. We can simply choose to drag category onto rows and then see it this way. Or we can filter it right away. So put category onto filters, and in here we're only looking at technology. Visually speaking, we can see the cell that has the darkest color, but another way to validate that is to simply look at our color legend, and we can see that the maximum value it's being reported here is 49,919, which is the same as that value. So the answer to this particular question is November of 2022. Question number 3. Which subcategory has the highest profit ratio? So a quick Google search gives us this definition. It basically says the profit ratio compares the earnings reported by a business to its sales. So in here, the earnings will be your profit. On the right-hand side, we're also going to see our equation. And here we're looking at our profit. That is revenue minus cost. Again, that's our profit. And revenue is equivalent to our sales. So going back to Tableau, we are going to generate a new calculated field. So on the drop down in your sidebar, let's create a calculated field. Let's call this profit ratio. And in here, we're going to look at the total profit divided by the total sales. So that's going to be sum of profit divided by sum of sales. And let's click OK. Now let's also change the default formatting so that this shows up as a percentage. So right click on profit ratio, default properties, number format. We're going to choose percentage, and we can leave it as 2 decimal places for now, and let's click OK. So now we have the data points that we need to answer this question. We're looking at subcategory, which is that, and we're also looking at our profit ratio, which we just created. So let's drag subcategory and profit ratio. And in here, we can simply sort this. And the answer to this question is labels. Question number 4. Which product has the widest profit range? So in here, we are looking at each individual product. That's going to be our product ID. And we also want to see the profit values. So for example, maybe some profit might be $5, other profit might be 10, and the other profit for certain transactions might be 100. What we want to know is this range. So if sometimes the profit is $5 and at most the profit is $100, what we're looking for is the difference between this, which will be 95. Now by default, we can see this range. When we right click on any of our measures, it will usually give us a range of values for a particular measure. For example, if we right click on profit and describe, in here, we can load the values, and this is what's being reported as a domain. Now we simply want to do this for each individual product. Let's close this. And for now, we're simply going to pull in our product ID, put that in rows. In here, we are getting a warning because there are too many values, and Tableau is just prompting us if this is truly what we want to do. Because a lot of times when we are displaying something visually, we want to limit it and make sure we are showing the most important pieces. But if you have too many values, it may not emphasize the most important areas or the most important numbers. In this particular case though, we're simply just going to say add all members. Now, how do we get the smallest and the largest profit range? Now, the good thing is all of these are really just aggregations. One is a minimum and one is a maximum. We can right-click drag profit, so right-click drag onto columns. When we right-click drag, we are going to be given this drop field window and we can select exactly what we want. So in here, the first time we're going to choose minimum, and the second time we are going to use our maximum. So minimum first, and then maximum next. And in here, right-click drag profit again. This time it's going to be the maximum. Now the final piece is really just another calculated field. So let's create another calculated field, and let's call this profit range. Now, because I already have these two values in my canvas, I'm simply going to drag and drop them into my calculated field editor. I'm going to take maximum profit first minus our minimum profit. So drag it over, minus our minimum profit, and that should give us our profit range. So let's display this. Once we sort the profit range axes, so let's sort the last column. In here, we are going to see that particular product. If you want to see the product name, we can also drag our product name onto our rows shelf as well. So let's drag this over. Again, there's too many values, but we're just going to click OK and add all members. So again, the answer to our question is this first product. Question number 5. How many customers ordered in June 2021? So we're looking at a few different things in here. We're looking at the date. We're only looking at the customers who purchased within that date range. So let's try to answer this a couple different ways. So first, let's narrow down our data to June 2021. Let's take order date, put that onto filter. Now in here, we can opt to filter by year first, and then drag order date again, and then filter by month. Or Tableau already has a built-in format, which is month and year, so we can simply take advantage of that. So month, year, and then next. And in here, we're looking for June, and it's going to be June 2021, and let's click OK. Now, a couple different ways of answering this question. First, we can simply drag our customer ID onto rows, and from here, we can simply take a look at our number of marks. As long as you only have customer ID in your canvas, you will be able to see the accurate number of customer IDs that are being displayed. And in this case, it's going to be 90, so 90 customers. Let's remove customer ID now. A second possibility is our usual right-click drag. So let's take our customer ID, right-click drag onto rows, and we can choose our count distinct customer ID. Remember, what we're looking for is the count distinct, not the count, because we want to treat customers uniquely even if they went back several times in June. So count distinct, and in here, our answer is 90. Now, just to highlight the difference between count distinct and count again, let's display our count of customer IDs. So right-click drag customer ID a second time, and this time we are going to choose the first one. And again, the only reason for this is for us to be able to differentiate, but the answer we're looking for is 90. Let's click OK. Let's also display the marked labels. The answer to this question is 90. It's not 199. So this count of customer ID actually shows us the number of times customers have purchased from us, or the number of times the customer IDs appear in our records. But again, you might have the same customer show up 5 times, and we want to count this customer as 1 and not 5. Question number 6. How many customers first ordered in June 2021? Now, we have to be a little bit careful here. The wording is very, very similar to the previous question. So the previous question, how many customers ordered in June 2021? But this time around, there is one word that has been added and it makes all the difference. So in here, we're looking for customers that first ordered in June 2021. We might be inclined to think that we can answer this very quickly using the same strategy, but not quite, depending on what we do. So let's try this a few different ways. So let's start by adding our filter for order date. Let's drag order date over to filters. And this time, because we are looking at the first, we're looking at the minimum. So instead of this month and year, that's not enough anymore. What we need to get is actually the minimum because we're looking at the first. So under minimum, let's click on next. And then here, let's set up our date range. It's going to be 2021 0601 all the way to 2021 0630. So June 1st to June 30, 2021. And let's click on OK. Now here's the thing. If we simply take our customer ID, right-click drag onto our rows, and then use a count distinct, we are not going to get any results. In here, it basically gives us a 0. There is 0 customers, but that's not 100% true. Remember that the way Tableau works is all of these measures are going to be subdivided by any dimensions that we have in place. In this case, this particular canvas, we don't have any dimensions, so we are looking at grand totals. It is the overall minimum ever in this particular data source, and it's going to be the count for that particular data source. And in here, because we filtered, so chances are the minimum order date is probably not in June 2021. We probably have records back in 2020 and 2019. So again, that's the overall minimum. Now let's just validate this. I'm going to open up a new worksheet and let's just display the minimum order date overall. So I'm going to right-click drag order date onto our rows. Again, not to the filter, but just to simply display this. And we're going to get minimum of order date. And we're also just going to display this as a discrete field. So the minimum order date is January 3rd, 2019, which means our filter, the minimum that we're looking for is somewhere in June. So let's go back to question number 6. So how do we answer this question? Let's remove this count distinct customer ID. One way to answer this question is to simply display our customer IDs. So drag customer ID onto our rows. And in here, because now we're slicing the data, we are now seeing the minimum per customer. And from our marks, we can see that there are 8 customers that fall into this condition. Now, another way to answer this question is to create an LOD. So let's create a fixed LOD that gets the minimum order date per customer. So let's create a calculated field. So let's call this cohort date. And in here, we're going to use a fixed LOD. So fixed, and we're going to fix this to our customer ID. And our aggregation is going to be our minimum of order date. And let's close our curly brace. So let's try to answer this question. I'm going to clear the screen. Now, because we have a new field that is fixed to the first date that that customer has purchased from us, we can now start using this into the filter as if it's any regular field. So we can drag cohort date onto our filter. And this time, I'm going to use this usual month and year, very similar to the format we chose for question number 5. So let's select that. We're looking for June 2021. Let's click OK. And now we can count. Let's right-click drag our customer ID onto our rows. And we're going to count distinct our customer ID. And the value that we get is 8. This works now because this particular field, our cohort date, it's not affected by any of the other dimensions we have in our canvas. This is fixed to a customer ID. Question number 7. The product that had the second highest sales in 2019 was ranked what in 2022? Now for this particular question, we are going to use a table calculation function called rank. So we're going to be ranking based on our sales. But for now, let's simply create our bar chart. So in here, we're looking for a product. So I'm going to take our product ID. Let's drag our sales. And we're also going to display this by date. So I'm going to take my order date and put that in columns. So now we have all the 4 years and all the sales for each product for 4 years. Now we're really just interested in 2 years, 2019 and 2022. So I'm simply going to keep those and filter out all the other years that we're not interested in. So I'm going to take 2019 and control click 2022. And I'm going to specify to keep only. Let us sort the 2019 sales. So visually, we know that this is the product that is the second highest sales in 2019. Now what we can do is we can add ranking. Let's add our ranking in label. So I'm going to copy the sum of sales. So control drag sum of sales onto label. And instead of displaying the actual sum of sales, I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to choose a quick table calculation of rank. So now we can easily see that the product that was ranked as number 2 in 2019 is ranked as number 10 in 2022. If we want to know the product name, we can also add our product name. So drag product name over to our rows. And we can see in here that this is the product that was ranked in 2019. It's our Lexmark monochrome laser printer. And this is ranked as number 10 in 2022. Question number 8. Who among our most loyal customers bought the most from us? That is, have the highest sales. Right now, we're going to make an assumption that loyal means they keep on coming back every year. Granted, loyal can mean many different things. So if this is a question that is posed to you, it would be prudent to ask for clarification. Again, in this case, we're going to make an assumption that loyal means they come back every year. We can answer this using some of the built-in functionalities in Tableau, or we can also elect to use a fixed LOD. So let's go over both. So in here, let's pull in our customer ID first. And let's pull in our order date. Now what we're seeing right now is our customer ID and the number of years that they have purchased from us. So for example, this first customer purchased 4 times, but as we scroll down, some customers have purchased only 3 years, and some customers even purchased less than that. So what will be really helpful for us is if we count this ahead of time. To answer this particular question, we can use just a regular calculation or a fixed LOD expression. Both of those can get the correct answer for us. So for now, we're just going to use our regular calculation. So create a new calculated field. So let's call this number of years as customer. And we are going to count distinct the year of our order date. And let's click OK. So let's drag this new calculated field over to our columns. And now we can simply remove our year of order date. And let's sort the axes. So we can see that we have some customers that have purchased 4 years. As we scroll down, we should start seeing some customers that have purchased 3 years, some customers that have purchased less than that. Let's show the filter for the number of years as customer. And in here, we only want to retain the customers that have purchased 4 years. So this still leaves us with 306 customers. Now, this doesn't quite answer our question because the question is among these customers, among these 306 customers, who among them have bought the most, have the highest sales? So one way to answer this question is to simply take our sales, drag it over to our columns, and sort by sales. And from here, we can see that it is this particular customer. So let's display the customer name as well. So customer name, drag that over to our customer ID. So the answer to this question is Adrian Barton. Let's look at question number 9. How many products are in the top 20 sales for both years 2021 and 2022? So let's try to understand this question first. So we are being asked for the products. So let's pull in our product ID. Let's also display the sales, and let's also subdivide this by year. So I'm going to drag over our order date onto our columns. And we're also interested in just 2021 and 2022. So I'm going to control click 2021 and 2022 and keep only. Now let's also sort the sales for 2021. So if we were to count the 20 in 2021, we want to know from among these products, which of those are also in the top 20 for the year 2022. Now, we can do this manually by looking at each individual value, but it's probably not very efficient for us. This might only work when we're looking at a maximum 20 values, but what if the question is the top 100 or the top 30, the top 50? Well, it becomes a little bit tricky. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use something that is more scalable. We're going to use sets with a formula. So let's create a set for our product ID. So right-click product ID, we're going to create a set, and we're going to choose top. For now, let's call this top 20 by sales in 2021. Now in here, we're going to be using the formula. So by formula, we're going to set this to 20, and we're simply going to say if the year of order date is equal to 2021, then we are going to display sales, and then end. Now you're going to notice there are red squiggly lines, and it's because what we need to supply is actually an aggregation. In here, it has to be a minimum, a maximum, a sum, a count, so we can simply enclose this whole expression into an aggregation. In here, we're going to use sum, and we're going to enclose the whole expression into this sum. So what does this do? If that particular record happened in 2021, then this expression pulls in the sales. And this happens for a number of those records. Well, what about transactions in 2019? Well, for transactions in 2019, this expression right here will be false because it doesn't match 2021. But in this if statement, we also don't have an else, which means the value that gets assigned is actually a null. And null doesn't get added to anything. So in this case, we're truly just getting the values for 2021. And with this particular set, it's the top 20 for that year. Let's click OK. Let's create our second set. So let's expand this sidebar first so you can see the full name. And let's just duplicate this top 20 by sales. Let's duplicate this and let's edit that second one. And in here, it's going to be top 20 by sales in 2022. We're going to go to the top tab. And in here, all we need to change is the year. So instead of 2021, it's going to be 2022. Now we are not quite done yet because what we want is one collective list. Which of these IDs appeared in one set and also appear in a second set? So we can create combined sets in Tableau. So we can select these two sets. So control click the first one and then control click the second one. We can right click and then create a combined set. The options that are available for us, by default, it's going to be all members in both sets, and that is called a union. And what we are looking for is actually the second option. We only want the shared members. These products must have been in the top 20 in the first year and also part of the top 20 in the second year. So in here, shared members in both sets, and we can change the name. It's going to be top 20 in both 2021 and 2022. And let's click OK. Now the easiest way to get our answer is to simply take our new set and then put that in our filter. So let's drag this combined set over to our filters. So in here we can see our product ID. There are 14 marks, but it's 7 rows by 2 columns. So we're looking at our 7 products. Let's clear this worksheet. What we could also do is just simply take our combined set, put that in our filter, and then count our product ID. So I'm going to right-click drag product ID onto rows, count distinct product ID, and in here, simply display our mark labels. So there are 7. The final question also requires calculation. So if the discount amount is discount multiplied to sales amount, which customers from each region received the most discount? So let's create a calculated field for our discount amount first. So on the dropdown, let's create a calculated field. Let's call this discount amount. And this is going to be our discount multiplied to our sales. And let's click OK. Let's pull in our region. Let's pull in our customer IDs as well. So customer ID. And from here, let's take our discount amount and put that in columns. Let's also sort this. Now, one way to answer this is to visually look which one is at the top for each region. But at some point, if we have too many values, for example, if you have too many regions, it's going to be a little bit hard to answer the question quickly. So one thing we can do is we can use the rank calculation again. Scroll to the top, and I'm going to copy this sum of discount amount. I'm going to copy that to label, so control drag onto label. And on the drop down of the pill on label, we're going to add a quick table calculation, and we're going to use rank. Now by default, we are seeing some ranks that look a little bit off. So 3, 7, 9. So what happened to rank number 1, rank number 2? Well, those customers actually belong in a different region. So what we want to do is we want to change our scope so that our ranking doesn't go across different regions. So on the drop down, we're going to compute using, instead of table down, it's going to be pane down. And to easily find all of these customers, we can simply copy this field onto our filters because we only want to see the ones that are ranked number 1 across the board. So control drag to copy this field onto our filters, and we're going to retain just 1. So these are all of our customers that are ranked number 1. Now we might decide to add our customer name. However, that might pose a little bit of a problem. If we give this a try, if we drag customer name over to our rows, all of a sudden, what you're seeing is all of these other customers show up again, and all of them are ranked 1. And the reason for that is by default, what we have done is we've said the scope is pane down. But right now, the meaning of the pane or the group has changed. Before, when we only had region and customer name, the group was the region. The group is the second to the last discrete dimension. But now, because we've added our customer ID, our group is actually our customer ID. Now, we could also say, oh, let's just remove customer ID and that solves the problem. However, we have to be very careful because names are not unique. There might be another Becky Martin in that same region. So again, we have to be very careful when we make these assumptions. So let's bring back our customer ID. And let's remove customer name for now. A way to go around this is to edit our table calculation. So let's take a look at this version first. This is the correct version. Now, when we right-click on this pill that has the rank and we edit the table calculation, we can see in here that the group is the region. The group is the unchecked value. You can kind of see that it's highlighted right now. It's the unchecked value. And the ranking happens along whatever is checked. So in here, it's going to be along all the customer IDs. Those are the ones that are being ranked and grouped by region. So we just need to remember this when we are working with multiple dimensions. So let's close this first. And this time, I'm going to add our customer name. Let's put that right beside our customer ID. And again, we're going to get odd result. But to fix the problem, let's go to the pill that has the rank. Let's edit the table calculation. And note in here, there are now 2 fields that are part of the group. So the group is the region as well as the customer ID. Again, we just need to remember that what we want to group by is region. And we want to rank along both of these values. So we can make that adjustment. Under specific dimensions, we're simply going to check our customer ID because it has to be ranking by that as well. Let's close this. We can see that it's now ranking 1, 2, 3 all the way across. And you're probably asking the question, how come it's displaying all of those values? Well, it's because we actually have 2 fields that have the table calculation. So we simply just need to copy the new version onto our filter. So let's remove the old one and control drag or copy the updated pill. And this time it's going to be number 1. And these are our top customers for each region. As I've mentioned, you can download the file in Gumroad. So when you click on question number 1, you should be able to download the Word document. There's also a second set of practice questions. This is another set of 10 questions if you are interested to practice more. In this second set, it's going to be very involved questions that would be using groups, calculations, so regular calculations, we have table calculations, LODs, and also looking at some analytics features like trend lines, clusters, and box plots. It may not seem a lot because there's only 10 questions, but I can guarantee you that some of these questions will help tackle different features and different types of calculations in Tableau. Now, for this second set, you're also going to get a document with a step-by-step solution, as well as the starter workbook and the solution workbook. And you will also get any future updates to this set of questions. And that is it. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you again next time.